Hello, everybody. I'd like to. Hello. I'd just say we've got 3 esteemed guests with us today, and this is just the result of discussions by 9/11 Revisionist, whose first name begins with N. I don't know how often I sometimes worry about how much he wants to be named. So I have with me Tim West, Dr. Mike Yeadon, and Dr. Judy Wood, and we're just going to have a general chit chat. There's no particular, we're going to talk about 9/11 and COVID, but beyond that, it's going to be a free-ranging sort of thing. We haven't got a script or anything. We haven't agreed anything in the sort of set of 12 topics, which we might or may not cover. So, I think maybe.
Just before we started, Andrew, Judy was telling a story about an interview. And basically, the bottom line was that the interviewer seemed to be doing quite their best, as it were, to not just ask straightforward questions and listen, but somehow to steer the audience. And well done for even getting an interview, because my experience over the last several years has been that the truth of channels, those are the not the large national channels. So in the UK, not the BBC or Sky or anything like that, but the smaller ones that people watch because they think they're racy and independent. They don't want to speak to me. They don't want to speak to me. Even the very well-established channels, I feel like that kid in junior school again when they're picking the football team, because I was always asked basically if it was a choice between a pile of jumpers for the goalpost or me, they would probably have the pile of jumpers. So I'm quite used to this. But the bottom line is, Judy, we're describing the 3 stories. That the official story, then there's the authorized conspiracy theory, which everyone is encouraged to have a look at, and then there's the truth. Other people call it the third camp, Camp A and Camp B, and then Camp 3. And James Delingpole in England, when he was having David A. Hughes describe these 3 camps, Camp 1, the official narrative, Camp 2, the authorized conspiracy theory, and Camp 3, he said, when you've worked out, is none of the above. And James quipped, it's a little club and there's hardly anybody in it. So it's a bit like
I call it the intellectual leper colony. I call it the leper colony.
So it took me a while. I was in Camp 2 for probably a year. And then, sometime in 2021, I realized that how I'd got into, that there was an infection, but it was exaggerated or didn't come from where they said. I just thought none of this works. And then I started to realize that I said to one day to my wife, they haven't just lied about, masks and proximity and PCR testing. They've lied about everything. It's literally everything.
That reminds me. I don't know of anyone who has read my book front to back who then got the shots.
Good.
Interesting.
See, that's the input. There's a guy. I probably got this wrong because Tim is good at math, so you'll probably know, Judy. Was it this guy called Bayes, and he came up with Bayesian probability? And my amateur understanding is something like this. What's the probability of something given this? So if you just treat something in isolation, it might feel very unlikely. For example, that the most important politicians and senior advisors on the television, you'd hopefully, if you were a normal person, you'd think they'll mostly tell you the truth. But if you've worked out that of the 10 most important things they've told you recently, 7 are established lies, and the other 3 you're not sure about, what's the probability the 11th thing they tell you is a lie? And they say it's almost certainly a lie. And I've got to that point. I approach new things, and my rule of thumb is simple. It's not novel, but it struck me as novel when I thought of it. Anything that's of at least moderate importance that everyone has been told that you can't check because it's too far away, too small, or too complicated is a lie. And I'm aware that I'm on sticky ground with the shape of this realm, which I refuse to look at because I don't think I can work it out. Everything else I've actually spent days and days and days looking at is a lie. And so you just get to this point of thinking, my God, I don't mean everything's a lie. I mean everything the political leaders tell you that everyone's told that you can't check. That's a lie. And of course, one cure for this is stop listening to liars. So in 2020, stop listening to liars.
Oh yeah.
So don't listen to official people at all about anything. So I've stopped. I don't watch TV. I've thrown them all out. I don't listen to the radio because you get news reports which are syndicated. I don't read papers. I don't follow anyone that covers the news. I follow some people who occasionally talk about news items, but I don't follow anyone that covers the news. And I think I've missed nothing in 5.5 years. And I also don't even allow myself to be exposed to adverts. So I mute them and cover the screen. I know it's a bit nuts, but I think I feel a lot better after 5.5 years of not listening to liars.
Yeah, so, I do exactly the same, Mike, as well. I even wrote some software for a thing, and it'll switch the radio station when it gets the news item or whatever. So
yeah, that would be good, because I wouldn't mind some of the programs. I can't be bothered with having to jump up and turn the news off. So I listen to podcasts. It's a mixture. I like automotive stuff, like people restoring things or doing stupid things with motors and old machinery, woodworking, and people like yourself, Judy. I do listen to people who've got something important to say, and I don't listen to very many people, because after a little time I think, I'm sorry, what you're telling me feels forced in some way. I give them a couple of goes and then don't listen to them ever again. Don't listen to liars.
May I ask, Mike, so you read the Where Did the Towers Go book? Give me your thoughts on what you read and how you came to read it. How did it come into your awareness? Was that Norman's doing then?
No. I think I was aware of the book, and Judy, I saw one of probably very many lectures you'd given. Someone had recorded it. Wasn't the best recording, but I liked the fact that I think you even said you don't want to use words to describe phenomena that put meaning into people's minds. I think you invented the word, or used the word justified, because you were showing a slow-mo of one of these towers coming down, and you kept asking the audience the question, where did the towers go, rather than how did they get blown up, or how were they demolished? You asked a different question, and I really liked that. And that came through very much in the book. You weren't trying to force fit. I think the strongest impression I had, and I talked about this with Tim recently, was that the towers are clearly gone. I went up them some time ago, so I think they were there. And I went to ground zero, so yeah, they've definitely gone. But all means I could think of that could have got rid of them could not possibly account for what we saw and what was then lying underneath it at the end of it. So I think that means, like as Spock would say, that means there must be some other technology. There must be some other means was used to reduce that tower from its firm building that you could go in to a small pile of rubble. And so why is that?
When did you sort of first think that? When did you first think all those towers turned to dust or whatever? When did you become suspicious of the official story?
Only shortly before we spoke. It was certainly that year. I think I knew it was. No, let me get this right. I'd worked out quite quickly once I got to the end of 2020 this bit about if it's important and you can't check it, it's a lie. So I went down quite a long list, and 9/11 was. I mean, I knew it hadn't been knocked over by a bloody plane. I knew that.
Yeah.
I'm enough of a hands-on amateur engineer. I used to ride motorbikes, still got them stripped into bits. I know what happens when something weak hits something strong. You know empirically. And I watched a few jet propulsion lab crashes of, hollow shells being thrown against concrete walls, or cars being crashed on jet-powered sleds at speeds ranging from like 40 miles an hour to about 200 miles an hour. So I knew that if something is very deformable, it doesn't matter if it hits something very strong, even hard, it won't cut it. It's not the way it works. So, but it didn't occur to me in 2001. I was walking between two buildings at Pfizer. Probably would have been early afternoon UK time. We were 5 hours back. And it was there on the news, this sticking up bit with the black smoke coming out the side. It was like, oh my God, I had to go to my meeting. At the time, I just thought a plane's hit a building. By the time we came out, I think they'd gone. And of course, like everybody, I went home and I watched it on repeat for probably 6 or 8 hours. It didn't occur to me that anything other than a terrorist outrage had occurred. But towards the end of 2020, I got to my little scribble list. And this was one when I looked at it again, I thought, I think I may have watched a clip by you, Judy. And so quite quickly. But here's the thing, though. I don't think I got. Yeah, that's what I got wrong. I spent the next 4 years, I think, thinking, well, yeah, it was an inside job. I don't need to know how they did it because it was an inside job. It's like, I don't really care. I do care, but it's sad. But it doesn't matter to me who actually assassinated an individual. Poor
I think at that point, you really, you realised that you've been lied to.
Yeah.
But then I think, as you sort of said before we started recording it takes so much work to try and unpick it.
Yeah.
That you get down to the point of, well, how much time am I going to invest in this investigation?
Well, here's the exact point, though, Andrew, and then it really clicked properly only when we spoke. When we spoke, Jill, I'd said to, Judy, I said to Andrew, until we'd spoken, I said, I didn't really think, why was it important? I concluded it was an inside job. Lots of things were inside job. I enjoyed watching Oli Damagard for several hours. So I knew that terrorism is an inside job. It's just outrageous. Why do I need to know this? And he described what had happened. Anyway, I finally got to the point of, oh my God, it may be an inside job, but the how they did it, it does not involve any of the authorized conspiracy theories. It's not mini nukes. It's not little elves with hacksaws. You know what I mean? It's like no method for bringing it down could account for what we saw and what happened afterwards. And that's when I thought, yeah, oh my God, it means there's some technology hidden from us that has been used, I think. And the implication of that is the buggers will probably use it again. And maybe there are 9 other things they've got that we don't know about. So suddenly, instead of it being one of many lies, it became an important lie. But I haven't got any further than that, other than that conclusion.
Right. So, Dr. Judy, how did you become aware of Dr. Mike Yeadon and what he'd been saying? And
well, I was searching for information or somebody who was making sense about the COVID nonsense. And the conclusions you had made had, because of this, then this, like for instance, with the shots, there's all these people dying, and they're still issuing the shots.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely.
Yeah. No, so it's definitely by design.
Yeah. No, I think that was probably the key phrase that I think I've coined the phrase toxic by design. And I borrowed a similar phrase from a medicinal chemist. I was working with very clever people at Pfizer, and we realized that to date, all inhaled medicines, mostly used for asthma and chronic bronchitis, things like that, they're really medicines you could have rubbed on your skin or eaten, but they found a way, they were potent enough and stable enough to be formulated in a little inhaler, and you could puff them. And we realized when we evaluated the characteristics, there were about 7 or 8 different drugs. And most of them weren't really ideal, because an ideal inhaled drug would stay in the lung or act in the lung and last a long time, for example. And when it escaped into the blood, it'd be removed quickly. So you get what we would think of as a topical effect. You'd affect the organ that you were trying to treat. And most drugs just went straight through. And so we, over a couple of years, medicinal chemists and I worked on a series of 6 characteristics of a drug that would make it inhaled by design. So that, and then we started publishing papers using this, and it got picked up by people. Topical by design. It's like, don't just take a drug and put it in an ointment and stick it on someone's skin. Design a drug to be the best you can do to act in the skin and to be as safe as possible. And so inhale by design was a phrase I was associated with. I didn't invent it, But in 2020, I nicked it and I said, these are toxic by design. I can see multiple unnecessary components of these, which are recognized by people like me and all my peers as potentially dangerous or actually dangerous. So you should anticipate injury at least. So I knew it was intentional, because before a medicine goes into development, as you would expect, I hope, when we were honestly, my peers and I were not trying to make dangerous medicines. We're trying to make a new medicine. It'd be wonderful if you can do that. It'd be great. So whenever a person is advancing a candidate, their 5 or 6 peers in different therapy areas are required to pore all over your little dossier and find fault with it, frankly. Your job is to say, what about this? You haven't looked at this clearance or this drug-drug interaction risk, or can you actually synthesize this at scale? Or that looks like a masked aniline. Have you checked that? So there's no candidate that would get out of the research labs without all people like me and my team, because I would say, look, there's a neighbor's compounds come through, not sure about whatever it is, the metabolic profile. Could you have a look at it overnight? And they'd come back in with questions. So those so-called vaccines, if it was an honest endeavor and not some military trick, me and my peers would have pored all over it all night, and they would have found most of the things that I found in one go.
I suppose you could draw an analogy here in that, that what you're saying there, Mike, is that you were kind of like the security. You were one of the security features, and you looked at things. And then with 9/11, we heard about all these security failures, with the planes getting through the defense. So in other words, what that reveals is that there's another level of things going on. And one of the things I wanted to try and get in this discussion is the parallels between 9/11 and COVID, and that's kind of one of them. That we were supposed to have security measures in place to stop what happening, and they were ignored, or they were circumvented, or they were subverted in some way. So that's
the Pentagon being attacked is a dead giveaway, because what building is got to have the biggest defense of any building in the United States?
The Pentagon.
Yeah.
The Pentagon.
Yeah. And actually, when the disaster happened, there was a reporter who had called in his story, and I've got a recording of it actually. He said, "Oh, those ambulances in the background and stuff, that's for something involving airplanes in New York, and whatever it was that happened at the Pentagon." I think that was beautiful.
He'd forgotten.
There's also that very famous clip of Jamie McIntyre, isn't there, saying when he's outside the Pentagon, got other people in the studio, and they're saying, "Oh, so what does it look like? What's happened with the plane at the Pentagon?" And he says, "Well, I can't see any evidence of a plane here at the Pentagon." And then he had to backtrack on that.
The first recording I heard, well, I actually had my VCR going and recorded it. I think it was Bryant Gumbel was doing the show, and he says, "Oh, we're getting our very first pictures of the Pentagon here. Oh, that must be near the Pentagon, because there wasn't any damage."
There wasn't anything. Because the roof hadn't come down yet. Engines on the lawn. No, I know, and even things like was it Flight 93 that has showed us a furrow in the ground with some smoke coming out of it. And honestly, I can remember Lockerbie with a Pan Am jumbo that fell on Stockholm. And I'm afraid there were lots of bits. It was horrible. So where were the bits? So I was suspicious, but actually, one of the things that occurs to me, because some people say, "How did you not know you were working for a criminal enterprise for 33 years or whatever?" And it's because if you don't suspect anything, you don't see anything. And if you're an honourable person, you're working with other honourable colleagues, you'll never see anything. And then they'll say, "Well, what about when Pfizer faced a $2.3 billion fine?" And we were bloody furious. We knew that some people had done things that were criminally bad, that had harmed people, and they'd rightly been fined. We were furious. I'm sure people who worked for British Petroleum when Deepwater Horizon went pop, if that was real, they were probably pretty cross as well. But did every employee of BP resign? Of course they didn't. And neither did we resign from research in another country because headquarters and commercial had done something evil for several years. It's like, we were not happy. I wouldn't say it was one of those things, because clearly it wasn't one of those things. It was a major crime. But I had no idea. I didn't have any idea how corrupt politics, money, regulators, and large corporates are. And now, have grown up a bit. It's like they're all in each other's pockets. And I imagine crimes only come to the surface when they've decided to. And probably more crimes than not that we hear about is when someone's fallen out with their criminal colleagues and they've ousted them.
I think on that sort of theme as well. One of the really big things that hit me was when I was told about Eisenhower's speech in 1961, and he's saying, beware of the military-industrial complex. And that's the common bit. That's the bit that everyone quotes. But there's also another bit after that where he said, we're going to become the hostages of a scientific technological elite. And that is certainly more relevant in terms of, COVID particularly, but as well as 9/11. And so to me, Eisenhower was really clued into what was going on and how we're getting this corporate meshing of government and the military and large corporations and stuff like that. And I think that when I couldn't believe it when I heard that, because that's 1961, and that was the first time I heard about it was 40 years after that. So I think when you realise how long it's been going on, you can kind of forgive yourself a bit for.
I think why it's able to go on is what I put on the list about Little League soccer. That's what I call it. The strategy involved in Little League soccer. Wherever the ball is, that's where all the kids are.
Oh yeah, they're all chasing around.
There's mob around wherever the ball is, and that's how the grown-ups behave too. So if this is the thing, everybody just goes after it. They don't stop and think.
No, that's right. But back to that point, if I'm not stupid, and yet I was I would describe it without being insulting, I was a completely asleep person until 2020. Honestly, I knew, for example, that Tony Blair and one of the Bushes had illegally persuaded the British Parliament to authorize an invasion of Iraq. I think that's right. And I was pretty bloody cross about that, because that seemed to me, obviously, I knew that I didn't know lots of things. So when I would discuss it with other English people, and they would say, that's right, but you don't really know what's going on. Maybe they need to do this, And of course I thought, maybe they need to.
There was a million, wasn't there? I think a million people marched.
They did, absolutely. But it is true that when you're a normie and then someone says, maybe they do need to do this in order to, they can't tell us, but they need to do this to keep us safe or whatever. And you think, that must be it. What other conclusion will you reach? And so anyone who has not yet reached the conclusion that weird things are happening will regard Mike Yeadon as a formerly sound person who's completely lost his mind, vanished down the rabbit hole. And Wikipedia will tell you that's true, you see. Every mainstream browser, if you put Dr. Mike Yeadon in, every mainstream browser, which is what almost everybody uses almost all the time, will only return uncomplimentary information about me. And unless you're aware of that, because most people think search is a commodity, right? It doesn't matter which browser you use. Well, it bloody does matter for sensitive topics. Probably applies to you too. That sensitive topics, the people who control these have made sure that search is useless for topics they don't want you to find.
Have you seen the Eskslas article, Escape Keys article about that specifically?
I haven't seen that, no, but I was going to mention, why don't you talk a bit about Escape Key, because it ties in with Andrew's comments about the 60s. Escape Key has done remarkable work.
He's off the scale, isn't he? His last article is about the protocols shared for what's misinformation, what's allowed to be said, and this right centralized, and he's tied everything together like he has done with all the systems. I mean, it's really important to read Escape Key, I think, because he's shown the evolution and where we're at of how this financialization of compliance is going to work. And it's really very simple, because you've got your digital ID, which is central, but then that's attached to all the information, which comes from accredited accreditors. I like to think they've got this. That's the information that's allowed. You know, if you've been cleaning the leaves up for your neighbour, I don't think that's going to be on there. And then on the basis of that, all the financial choices are made. What you can buy, how much it costs, whether you can even begin a transaction automatically, algorithmically, AI, and then every time you do anything, there's then the stage where auditing, where all that is fed back in real time to your data and adjusted. So it's a perfect there's no laws needed, and there's nobody accountable.
No, exactly. I keep saying to people that you will have no recourse if you're, and also I describe this digital ID algorithm bit as crazily personal. So you could be in a queue with people and you think, oh, well, we're gang up together. And I said, no, you might be able to buy X, Y, and Z. The person behind you can't, because they've already bought a steak, so they can't buy red meat. You can buy one, but not here, because you're 500 yards outside your 15-minute city. And the person behind you could buy things because they're at home and haven't bought anything, but they're broke, and then the fourth person isn't allowed in the shop because they haven't taken a jab. So,
well, the ones who can buy the meat are going to get mugged in the parking lot.
Seriously, though, about Little League, those four people I've just described won't even talk to each other. They'll regard each of the others as beyond the pale. Right? One of them's broke. One is non-compliant and probably a health risk. One of them's out of your district. It must represent some kind of why are you here, you criminal? And the first one, it's like, you're greedy. You've already had your bug burger for the week, whatever it is. So, but it's easy it would be easy to defeat if, it's a bit like back to Bayes, isn't it? If you understood what was happening, it would be so easy. Just don't bloody sign up. But I've explained to intelligent people, and they still go, yeah, but you'll probably have to sign it up because apparently I won't be able to file my taxes without it. So don't file your taxes then. You don't have to do it. It's not with his belt in the hands.
I think the problem is, we're all sort of partly tied into the system in some way, and these people who've gone off grid and gone to live in a log cabin or built their own log cabin somewhere, they can kind of escape that system. But for the rest of us, really, well, maybe for now, yeah.
Have you heard of the ones who've been at gunpoint and have to put a smart meter on the log cabin? Tie into the grid?
Not quite, but yeah, I've heard stories like that. And there was some group that was looking after a wood, and they'd been there for about 20 years, and they were turfed out by the council after being guardians of this wood or curators of this wood.
That's the problem.
20 years, and so the system will come after you. But in other words, we're kind of trapped in the system. I have credit cards, I use banking apps and all that malarkey.
Me too.
And I feel that although I'm aware of these things, I don't want to kind of give up that the comforts, the creature comforts, if you will. Sure. So you're torn between those things. I mean, one of the other things that you wanted to talk about, Judy, was
as Andrew knows, I don't even have a cell phone. I've never gotten a cell phone.
Oh wow!
Wow,
never.
That's amazing.
Wow,
that is
I'm
amazing.
thinking I might need one if I want to go backpacking by myself.
Well, do you have a mobile phone instead of a smartphone?
No, I just have my laptop.
Oh, that's
you had
amazing.
one for a short period of time, didn't you? But that was loaned to you, wasn't it? I think that one you got this summer.
Yeah, I don't have that one anymore. And then when I was in England, Andrew loaned me one. Yeah,
so I could talk to you.
I didn't like mobile phones. I didn't like mobile phones. Like a dumb phone that you could make a phone call and send a text. Secretly. I don't like phones. I don't like talking on the phone. This is okay because we planned it, but I don't like being called. If people call, Tim will know this. I often if I don't feel like it, I don't take calls. I have no obligation to pick up the bloody phone just because someone decides to call me any more than I have to open the front door. Sorry. But I'd rather communicate by text, usually on a computer. But when smartphones came along, oh boy, I think I must be whatever, an eyeball gratifier, because straight away I could see the attraction of being able to watch little videos and things, and I could see engineering parts that I'm trying to buy from eBay. An old piece of a 1970s motorbike that's in Vietnam. It's exactly the one I want. You couldn't get me away from computers and smartphones. But Andrew, where it comes to, I have resolved. I've said, and I have to see how well I do. But I'm not going to sign up to digital ID, even if they tell me that as a consequence I will lose control of my own money.
Yeah, same. I mean, I won't sign up for any overt digital ID, but I tend to
I
think
rather die than do it.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to think that we've already got a kind of a digital ID, not a singular one.
Oh yeah.
We are beholden to the system.
Bit by bit, aren't they? Moving it in here, there, everywhere.
And depending on how you want to earn a living, I mean, I'll give you an example. I was a few years ago, I had to have a CRB check, which is this Criminal Records Bureau.
Yeah, understand.
I was going into people's homes.
Yeah.
And although I'd done nothing wrong, there'd been no complaints against me. The CRB check didn't come back for about a month, so I lost a month's salary simply because they hadn't got an up-to-date CRB check, even though nobody had sent any complaints. There was no evidence of me having done anything wrong.
No, I see where this is going.
So
later, a CRB check will be impossible if you don't have a digital ID. It'll just be cannot process application.
So there is that risk, but at the moment they're still trying to bring that in, and hopefully people are going to, like you say, say no. I think there is a bit of resistance to it, but again, I don't know how much. But I mean, the other things on the list that I was sort of looking at for discussion were, for example, I describe 9/11 as a trauma-based mind control. It's a trauma-based mind control operation, and I think COVID was as well. So I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that.
Actually, can I
can start out with my experience on 9/11. Worst day of my life. I'm in the faculty conference room watching the TV set, all my colleagues around me, and I'm watching this building froth up into dust. This image, and I'm looking like, doesn't make sense, and especially that like 5-inch thick wing silhouette. A passage like you see in a Wile E. Coyote cartoon, and like, what's going on here? And I'm thinking, now what would I expect a collapse to look like? Nope, doesn't look like that. Wow. And I look around the room, and my colleagues all look at me like what kind of a wacko?
In real time, you thought in real time you were confused.
It did not make sense, and when my eyes and ears don't agree, I turn off my ears, so I don't listen to what they're telling me.
And you were in an engineering faculty conference, engineering faculty room, weren't you? So you had engineers all around you.
I was a lunatic.
Yeah.
Like, I'm looking at the TV like, you guys aren't buying this story, right? And they look at me like, what kind of a wacko would we hire?
Wow.
And that's when I came up with the billiard ball thing, the billiard ball example. Because if you talk to them about the towers, it doesn't work. But then I have these innocent billiard balls and describe it. And I showed it to one of my colleagues, and he said, well, are you having a senior moment? That's elementary, physics. Yeah, of course that's correct. They could see it when it was innocent billiard balls, but not with regard to the towers.
Oh, I see. You mean if you replace a space-filling model with billiard balls, you could
the timing, yes, timing devices.
Okay.
And actually, I went to see my department chair, whose area of expertise is dynamics. And I knew he wouldn't go to my website, so I printed it out and took it to him. And he's reading it down like he's checking a student's work. And he gets down to the end, and then he realizes he painted himself into a corner he couldn't get out of. And he blew up in anger. And he threw the papers at me and said, only a forgot what name he used, person would do a thing like this, do the billiard ball thing. And I could see at that point, that was my first introduction to the idea that there are people who cannot handle it.
No, I got, and I don't know, because I wasn't one of those people. I think I have many faults, but one of my strengths is I'm quite happy to change my opinion about something. As soon as somebody shows me that I'm wrong, I don't fight it. I don't go, oh no, that's awful. I think, oh Christ, yeah, I've got that wrong. And I enjoy that. I quite enjoy being shown. I don't mind it, really. That's why when I spoke, I think a mutual friend invited me to speak to what are often called wrongly the no virus people, whereas we really, Tim and I call it the no evidence for viruses people. And one of them explains some things to me, and instead of going, oh, that's nonsense, you know, I definitely caught flu from my sister. Instead of saying that, I said, if what you say is true, it's extremely profound. It would be very difficult for other people to accept it, even if I do, and it'll take me some time to process this. So it's quite a long time, but I didn't shout him off the call. I thought, oh, right, okay, I better go and check that out. But
this is very similar. This is very similar to 9/11.
They reacted like you described, Judy. They get angry. I think they're frightened because when I describe, you know, the idea of submicroscopic airborne submicroscopic infectious particles containing whatever, some sort of genetic information called a virus that causes a disease. And when you've got a disease attributed to it, you become, quotes, contagious or infectious. Imagine for a moment both of those two things are not true. And instead you have alternative explanations for illnesses like spontaneous loss of internal equilibrium. And the example I give to people is a headache, maybe a severe headache. Not a single person has said, I wonder who I caught my headache from. Not a single person. And why don't they? Well, they go, well, it's because it's not an infectious disease. Okay, next example, chest pain, possibly angina or suspected angina. I wonder who gave me that angina. It's like, well, nobody did. You developed it. And I think colds and flu are exactly the same. You've got a thin layer of airway surface liquid covering every part of your airway from nose to the alveoli. It's under dynamic control. It's a mixture of waters, salts, proteins, mucins, and so on, with little cilia beating in it. And if that gets out of whack because you've gone in and out of warm, dry places to cold, moist places, you're stressed, tired, dehydrated, and you've eaten bad food, it's not surprising occasionally it goes out of whack. And that, I think that's what a cold is. And I think a severe version of that is what we call flu. And I didn't think that 6 years ago, and now I do think that. And when I think about it, loads of other dots, pieces of evidence that I'd not related to anything else before dropped into place. For example, cystic fibrosis, we're told, is a disease of loss of control, poor control of chloride channels, and that affects hydration on both sides of membranes. And guess what they get? They get frequent colds. So as soon as I had the idea, and then the other bit of data that I've not thought about for 20 years locked into it. Doesn't prove it's true, but it was attractive. And no one has subsequently said, no, that's nonsense because. So the things aggregate together. And so I don't mind being wrong, is all I'm saying. But I think a lot of people do. I think they're very threatened. The people you worked with, they must also, Judy, have known, I don't know, some part of them. They'd be clever people. Some parts of them must have known what they were seeing did not make sense. And they made it make sense and made you go away.
There's a couple of sort of follow-up points there. I mean, Judy, maybe you can tell the story of when we were in Scotland, and one of your colleagues came to one of your talks. He'd since moved, former colleagues. He'd moved back to the UK, hadn't he? And do you remember his reaction?
Yeah,
I remember it.
I don't remember it clearly, except he was like, well, you need to do some more research on it, or he didn't really know what to think. And I gave a pretty long presentation with a lot of evidence. When they can't handle it, they get mad.
What happened to you then? Were you working in a facility in which your skills were appropriate to the job, and you had peers that were had somewhat similar skill sets? I mean, what happened, as it were, as a result of there you were, this event occurs, you react the way you did, and what the hell happened to you? Yeah.
Well, I'm into experimental mechanics, real physical phenomena that I'm measuring. And using Moray interferometry, measuring very small deformations. Most people do computer programs and models and, cranking numbers and like, I like pin down real things.
Empirical.
And actually, yep. Actually, my dissertation disproved all theoretical models to at that time, because they're treating it as a 2-dimensional problem, but it has to be a 3-dimensional problem. Two different materials bonded together. They're just looking at the stresses that way, but it's also, through the thickness.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But so it's not. I didn't have a lot of colleagues that were experimental mechanics types. It was in the mechanical engineering department.
Okay.
But my PhD advisor, I sent him to the billiard ball page, and it's probably the biggest compliment I got. He wrote back. He said, "That's very instructive."
Yeah.
These are small words. I presented it at an engineering conference, and he even coached me how to present it. That what am I doing wrong? Here, audience, help me out. What have I done wrong? And so I said, well, here's what I did, but I didn't get the result that the official story gets. But what did I do wrong? And they're all scratching their heads, trying to figure it out, and they couldn't figure out what I'd done wrong.
Right, they're trying to work out.
So the billiard ball example, that was that sort of formed the basis for where did the towers go, really, and that was one of the first sort of elements of it, really, wasn't it? The book, I mean.
That's a foolproof example of the timing issue.
Okay.
There's no way, I'm saying if 9 out of every 10 floors is damaged, and you're going to get the top floor, you can drop 10 floors before it, goes splat and knocks that floor loose, and that comes down. So you have every 10 floors coming down. That's over 30 minutes.
Ah, I see. Yes.
I mean 30 seconds. Sorry, 30 seconds.
It can't all fall, as if free fall, and maybe it was even faster. I can't remember. But the whole thing vanished much faster than it could possibly have done through any of the, as I say, else.
Right. And dropping a bowling ball off the roof in a vacuum, it would take longer to hit the ground than the amount of time that the ground shook.
Wow.
From the seismic signal.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly.
That's pretty clear proof.
That's the point. I often say to people that when you're dealing with a real problem or a theoretical problem, sometimes it can be one piece of information which, if true, as it were, blows up your whatever model you might have had for what you're looking at. So instead of just putting it to one side, you have to go laser focus on it, because if true, everything else has to change.
Yeah,
and I mean, you picked out an example where everything had to change because whatever the drop time cannot be what it was.
My entry into 9/11 was really sort of to do with the free fall time. I mean, I'd done the free fall calculation not in the way that Dr. Judy had, but it's quite similar. And I didn't know Dr. Judy back then. And I was posting that on a physics forum, basically asking the same question: what have I done wrong? Yeah. And it was because I think I can't prove this, but I think it was because I was doing that I got picked to join the Scholars for 9/11 Truth group by this character called Stephen Jones and Jim Fetzer. I wrote all that up in my books, and that's ultimately how I came into contact with Dr. Judy probably about a year later, I think it was, nearly. And we were both in this Scholars for 9/11 Truth group. And that kind of, I think it's worth me mentioning that, because that sort of brings me on to the idea of one of the other things I wanted to sort of bring up and discuss is this idea of truth movements and groups. We're both, I think we've all kind of said different things here today, and people will realize we're pretty individual. We don't tend to tag along with other people very much. Probably I'm certainly a bit of a hermit. I don't really have much to do with other people. And I think Dr. Judy is probably way more sociable than I am. And anyway, so what happened with this group, this Scholars for 9/11 Truth? I was sort of invited into that group, and I'm thinking, great, But then certainly one of these people, Jim Fetzer, tried to compliment me. And so, I think I'd like to get Dr. Judy to talk about that a little bit, and then ask Dr. Mike after that what his experience of being in groups and COVID stuff. But if we go to Dr. Judy and you talk about your experience with the scholars group and what happened there, and I think that's quite instructive for people.
Well, I presented the billiard ball thing at a press club meeting because Morgan Reynolds was invited. He said he wouldn't go unless they invited me. Also, he was trying to get people to hear my work, and that's when Fetzer got wind of what I was up to. I'd already resigned from his club because he was making me do his website and other busy things, so I hadn't have time to do anything. And I knew he would harm me if I just quit. So I was supposed to post articles on his website. He was going to be out of town, but just to let him know what I posted. So I posted a bunch of no plane articles.
Right.
he blew up and he let me resign, so that was good.
I'll just briefly interject there that there is this parallel between 9/11 and COVID with the no virus idea and the no plane theory. That's actually quite similar. People blow up, when you try and discuss that in both topics.
Yeah.
And this group this idea that Fetzer was getting you to do things that you weren't particularly good at. You were doing
I'd never made a website before.
You were self-taught on that. And he invited me onto this steering committee. And I'm like the least steering committee type of person, that there is just about.
So they can steer you. That's what it's about.
Exactly.
Well, it's very interesting because I accidentally got mixed up in a couple of groups. Let me think. There was early on, Dr. Peter McCulloch and others, Pierre Corey, were pushing early treatment for COVID-19. And of course, I was reasonably enthusiastic early on because I thought I'm decent at pharmacotherapeutics. I can help you pick things. And of course, it took a while before I realized, well, there wasn't a bloody COVID. It wasn't a new syndrome. There was no unique collection of signs and symptoms that would justify people claiming there was a new illness. And I'm absolutely clear now. I'm not saying there definitely isn't anything called COVID-19. Some people might have been poisoned, in punctate poisonings, who knows? But it wasn't a new illness. I've got explanations for when people they explode and go, well, I was iller than I've ever been before. It's like, yes. And does that mean there was a viral illness? It's like, no. Does it mean there was a pandemic? No, also no. It's like, so why are you getting cross with me? It's like, because I had a test and it was positive, so I had COVID. It's like, anyway, so I got involved for a little while with people who I realized were, I personally think they were recruited. I don't think they just found their way into it. They were recruited to act as the whatever. They were like authorized conspiracy theorists or proved conspiracy theorists. And so once I realized that's what they were up to, I just left.
This is exactly what the scholars group was. It was to get skeptical people involved in something which they thought they were going to make a difference. But whoever set these groups up, they knew full well, that this group was disingenuous. Its function was going to be disingenuous.
Yeah. So
I came to call them a collection agency. They collect people.
Yeah. No, and just to be absolutely blunt, what they were doing was reinforcing the notion that there has been a new illness and a pandemic by providing alleged cures for them. And then what did these horrible people do later? They turned it into money. And those bastards, because I'll be as on it, they're evil people. I've told them and I've shown them the evidence. So if they were honorable people, they don't have to. I don't want them to talk to me. I want them to stop promoting lies and stop selling. It doesn't matter even if the medicines are not dangerous. Their worst part of their crime is to reinforce the false narrative that there was a new illness and a pandemic when there wasn't. And there was another group, the World Council for Health or whatever it's called, just unbelievably ambitious. The person tried to recruit me to be their like pharmaceutical advisor or head, whatever, chief scientist. And I said, this is before I was suspicious. I said, I don't want to do anything that has money involved in it, because people will say, whatever it is I'm doing, you're doing it for money. And anyway, I won't be able to, how will I be nimble if a particular line is necessary to sell things and I later take a different view? How will I do that? So I said, thank you for your invitation. No. But and then there was another group of physicians for COVID ethics, I think they're called. And again, by the end of 2 years, I said to them, there ain't no COVID, so you don't need to be ethical. You need to have physicians for ethical treatments of people would be a good title. But 6 years on, almost 5.5 years on, the same name, same 109 people wasting their time every week. And so I've ended up, as usual, as a team of one. And
lawyers for 9/11 Truth, medical professionals for 9/11 Truth, teachers for 9/11 Truth. They have a different fishing lure.
Lawyers for 9/11 Truth, yeah. All these, we've had these pilots for 9/11 Truth. And then I just came up with this group, which I thought most of these leaders of these groups I just mentioned could join, and I call that group Liars for 9/11 Truth.
Liars for 9/11 Truth.
Anyway,
I did come up with that.
After I'd resigned from Fetzer's Club, that's when I started doing some real damage and posting my website. And Fetzer realized he had to get a hold of that. So he tried luring me back in. And he said he was going to be presenting my work at the press club in the beginning of January 2007. And he wanted me there so I could answer the questions. That sounds kind of dumb. Like, why is he presenting it? And anyway, I ended up getting there. And that's when they did this ambush interview with this guy they hired, this
Greg Jenkins.
PhD physicist. Yeah, Greg Jenkins. And I was saying most of the towers turned to dust. And he would roll his eyes and laugh and make it seem like I was really saying something really stupid and strange. And the audience ate it up and thought I was stupid.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And the way he'd been coached, hadn't he? I think, as how to present himself, as he said, I'm just trying to understand what he's saying, and you were sort of stating really obvious things, but because of the way he was spinning it,
my face was pink, and the camera was a side view, and for him it was straight on with a nice hairdo.
Yeah, I think I've worked out what the big club decided to do about me. I was well aware early on. I thought, because I'd read stories about people who had been murdered by Hoffmann-La Roche or other companies for spilling the beans about whatever it was, Valium, something like that. We'd all read these stories. A small number of people definitely had been killed for revealing secrets. So I was aware that there was at least some risk, shall we say. But I'm not brave. I said to people that this is not courageous behavior. And they go, oh no, you're very brave. No, I've said, look, if anything like what I fear is going on, the most dangerous thing will be to say nothing, right? If we say nothing, and there is this basically a mass poisoning of people, which is what I thought it was. Or COVID actually isn't very important in the end. I used to think it was like the biggest event in world history. It's like, if you want to look at poisonings, pediatric vaccines over the last 40 years will probably be a bloody sight bigger in terms of numbers of people injured and lives destroyed. And there are probably yet other crimes I have not thought of. So it is important, and it was the one that woke me up. It was probably when the big club uncloaked their 150-year-old plan to basically take over. That's the starting gun, probably. But they were doing lots of things before that I was just too dumb to see, like injecting people with. There aren't any safe vaccines. You don't need any vaccines, and many other things. Unfortunately, I really feel embarrassed. I really should have sussed this earlier. That most of the biggest, most prescribed drugs, the most prescribed drug classes, certainly in my heyday, would be lipid-lowering drugs, antihypertensives, anti-diabetics, and antidepressants. And all four of those don't work. And I'm not quite so sure about the anti-diabetics, but the other three classes they don't do what they say. They're not helpful, and many of them are quite dangerous. And so, I don't know why I didn't put these. I knew they weren't brilliant drugs, but I probably thought, well, there are some people whom these are useful. But for example, if anyone's watching this and thinks, what is he raving about? It's like progressively over the last several decades, the standard for what a normal blood pressure is has been lowered by several millimeters of mercury. And the effect of that is that, say, someone like me, reasonably healthy guy, 65, my normal blood pressure would now be classified as moderate hypertension. And they would say it's appropriate for you to be on one or more blood pressure lowering drugs. Do you know the experiments, ladies and gentlemen, have been done on thousands of people like me who took antihypertensives from now until death, and people who didn't. And the people who took the drugs had slightly lower blood pressure, but did not live any longer. There were no medical benefits whatsoever from lowering their blood pressure, only cash benefits to the drug company and the physician. And of course, there are lots of side effects. So that's one case in point. And I'm afraid you can find similar crimes, and that's what they are. The bulk of pharmaceutical medicines prescribed are not appropriate, do not help, and often are quite dangerous. And yet people go home with a prescription and they go and fill it and take the tablets, and then with any luck they recover if it's a short course, and if they're unlucky they take them for the rest of their life, being slowly poisoned into death. It's like, I wish I'd woken up sooner, because I do feel pretty stupid. So now I pointed it out to myself, it's fairly obvious. But it just shows that even if you are willing to be honest with yourself, until you get that catalytic jolt, people don't realize. So what do we do with, I mean, yours is different, Judy. I think the reason we're speaking is not because it's another inside hack job on humanity. It's that as a non-expert, but someone who's sawn bits of wood up and bent bits of metal, I can see that when you collapse this hollow structure that contains some steel and some masonry and a lot of air,
and toilets,
however you bring it down, there should be a bloody great pile of rubble.
There should be some toilets. There's no toilets found in the debris.
But I say to people, in case you look Judy up and they go, she's a raving lunatic, like they say about Yeadon. He used to be sound and now he's sadly lost his mind. It's like, is it 100 floors, 110 floors? I don't know. 110. But even if you allow one floor for every 10 floors of masonry, I mean, honestly, could you pack 10 floors of steel, glass, concrete, plasterboard, carpet, and furniture and people? Could you pack 10 of them into one floor? Probably not. So that means it should end up being about 1/10 of the height of the tower, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less. How big was the lump on the ground, ladies and gentlemen, when it fell over? Was it about 1/10 of the height of the tower? No. Where did the towers go?
That's right.
To the ground level. That ambulance.
I don't know.
The ambulance at ground level.
But I don't know. And the reason is you don't know either, and they weren't knocked over by aeroplanes. And it doesn't matter what method you use for reducing it to rubble, you don't get what you saw. You don't get the pile on the ground, which was way too small, and you don't get the stuff that floated off down the river. And I don't know how it was done. It's not important.
You can rule out thermal energy. You can rule out kinetic energy.
Oh, it is very, again, it's very important, Mike. And this we realised this because when we left the scholars group, Dr. Judy had left, I think, a bit before I did, and we kind of, that's when we hooked up really, and we started collaborating, didn't we? And we had these 3-hour-long Skype calls, and you were saying, "Oh, look, I found this picture," and going through this, and you were showing me all this stuff, and I was just kind of scratching my head most of the time. But you found the Hutchinson effect, didn't you? And I'd heard of this.
Yeah, and we had this conversation, and I sent him a picture. I said, "Andrew, why is that car parked upside down? You know, wheels up in the air and roof on the ground." And he said something, and then, "Andrew, why is that car parked upside down?" And it was the third time, and I forget what expletive you used, and it just the light bulb came on.
Oh yeah, it's one of the F words. But then the other story we should tell.
Did that happen in Maui? Did that happen in?
I don't think there are any inverted cars in Maui. I don't know. I did ask people.
I've seen pictures that you've just described, Judy. Maybe it was from New York. Upside down cars.
The upside down cars, were in New York, and then you put together this page, didn't you? Several pages about the effects which lined up with John Hutchison's work.
Well, I was looking through the internet and I found some pictures. Oh, that looks like it's from the World Trade Center. Oh, wait, no, it's not. That's somebody's private collection of something. What is this? It looks just like the World Trade Center. And then that was John Hutchison's blog.
What is Hutchison? What is or who is? What is the?
So John Hutchison, he's a Canadian experimental physicist, and this is in the book. It's in towards the end of the book.
Okay,
it's all in there, and it will tell you what happened to the dust and everything. And John Hutchison, he was doing experiments in the 70s trying to reproduce Nikola Tesla's work. He was trying to reproduce Nikola Tesla's work, and he then was mixing together microwaves, magnetic fields, electrostatic fields, and he was getting effects like metal bending, melting, stuff was flying up in the air. He even, he even had things disappearing, and he actually attracted attention from the Department of Defense. He was based in Canada, and he had a colonel, John Alexander, who was head of the non-lethal weapons program. He went to see John Hutchison in 1983, and he was already familiar with the effects that John was creating, or he seemed to be.
Yeah.
And this John Alexander guy, he was working for Los Alamos National Laboratories, which is where they developed the atomic bomb. And then Dr. Wood and I put some of this information together, mainly about the effects rather than this John Alexander thing that I just told you about. And we put that on a web page, and then you sent this to Fetzer, who we think was trying to handle Dr. Judy and make sure she didn't do too much damage. And tell Mike that story about when you showed Fetzer the Hutchison effect page that you created, or we'd sort of collaborated on.
Oh, I gotta go.
Yeah. So the moment he had
an hour or two to talk, and I said, okay, here's the web link, and I'll walk you through it. Now, I was on the phone, and as soon as he saw it, I gotta go. I hung up.
And then after that, why we know this is true, Mike? There are many reasons why we know this is true, but after that, over a period of months, when we were putting this out there and telling people what we'd found, or what Dr. Judy found primarily, but I was voicing it too. This was when Fetzer started to say, well, I think Dr. Judy Wood's reputation is now under threat, but if she backs away from Hutchison, then her reputation can be salvaged.
He didn't state reputation. He left it that I could be salvaged if I backed away. So it was sort of like a death threat.
We've got that in email as well. That's in my books.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So we knew that this was a key factor, and indeed, going back to what some of your experiences where people won't talk about the no virus, they won't entertain it, they won't look at it.
No, they won't.
All the 9/11 truth groups, just about everyone, you've not heard of Hutchison at all, because nobody talks about it, and nobody talks about its connection to 9/11. They don't talk about Hutchison effect, and they don't talk about Hurricane Erin, which is also in the book.
Isn't it partly true that the whole 9/11 truth movement was set up in response to your letter to NIST?
No,
that was not Judy. The whole truth movement. This was the Architects and Engineers group. You can tell them about the Architects and Engineers group.
Yeah, I submitted a request for correction to NIST, and that was an act of whistleblowing that would qualify me to file a whistleblower case. But I think Andrew put out a press release about it, so the truthers got wind of that, and they realized they looked kind of stupid if they didn't submit something. And 3 weeks later, it was the first time the Architects and Engineers website went up. And they submitted something, but it had nothing to do with thermite. It was just saying your evidence is great, you just need a little bit more of it. It was a totally benign thing.
So if I may just follow on with that, ultimately what that resulted in was you filed a key time case, and then within that key time case, we got an affidavit from John Hutchison himself to say, look, this is what happened, this is what you should be looking at, these are the effects. You as a body producing technical reports about the destruction of the World Trade Center need to look at this. And essentially John Hutchison was there, his affidavit was there to say, I did this, it's this is what I found. I will testify in court if it comes to court that this is what I did. And then Dr. Judy had shown the parallels with 9/11, and so that was all there. And that architects and engineers group, we think, was set up to basically create a lot of noise, and they took in millions of dollars to essentially, have so much noise that all that information was essentially covered up. But yet they were supposed to be truthers. This is the whole.
No, I mean, certainly I drew the conclusion. I think before I even started speaking out, I had worked out that in order for what I thought was happening to be happening, the judiciary would have had to have been completely compromised everywhere. So I said that to people before we even, because people were saying, oh, we should bring court cases and so on. I said, look, I'll help. I ended up helping.
I think you might be interested to hear what happened with Dr. Judy in court, because she did have a court.
The first at the first thing, George Daniels was the judge who dismissed it, saying he wasn't going to hear a case about who shot JFK or what landed on the moon. And my lawyer, did a request for reconsideration, saying, "Excuse me, sir, maybe you misread misinterpreted the thing. It's not about the host." Anyway, we then appealed it to the highest level of appeal before the Supreme Court, and those the Court of Appeals, and those judges, there's 3 of them, were actually kind of respectful. They had some gobbledygook in there, and then in one of the footnotes they said, they know this law applies to my case, but for the ease of dismissing the case, we're going to ignore the law.
They actually said that in the ruling.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's like, okay, that's the first time I realized, this is too big of a case to go to court.
So this backs up what you were saying. This backs up what you were saying, Mike. And also tell them what happened at the court hearing when there were those 11 judges, was it, or there was 10 judges in the room or something? Or what did the guy say? When you want them to hear the case, obviously, and what did that judge say about
I don't. Or do you have a death wish or something?
That's
like
the
that?
one. Yeah.
That was the Court of Appeals.
What some of the other judges were thinking about allowing it to go to discovery, weren't there? Was some comment made, and then that judge said, when somebody entertained the idea of this case actually going forwards, your Keaton case going forwards, this judge said, do you all have a death wish or something, didn't he? Or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it wasn't, for me, it wasn't about, it is not now that before COVID, they went around and compromised all the judges. They've always been compromised. Basically, if something is big enough, they know before they are appointed, and certainly before they are promoted, that if something's big enough, they'll either know or they get a tap on the shoulder, and they know exactly what to do to make sure this never comes before either any court or not a significant court. And that has happened around the world for almost 6 years. There have been minor cases brought in some region in Germany. I think there was a minor case in Portugal ruling that PCR was not a suitable method for diagnosis and so on. Yeah. But I said to people, even if you win, and you won't, but even if you win, it will not create a precedent because they will simply ignore it. And secondly, even if you had a massive win, it will not be reported anywhere. And so once you realize that the media of all kinds and the judiciary of all kinds are corrupted, it changed course for me. It was like, there's no point in trying to appeal to them. There's not mum and dad up there that if you can persuade them, it'll save you. That because all the ones with the power to do that are already are in the big club, or are not willing to challenge the big club.
We submitted it to Supreme Court just to say that we took it as far as it would go. Yeah, and the Supreme Court doesn't have to hear a case unless they feel like it.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't feel like it.
No, and I don't blame them. I mean, what are they supposed to do?
I do.
Yeah, no, I know, but what they're basically, I think what I said is unfortunately true.
It is true.
So I think within about a year to 18 months, I said to my wife, the only people worth speaking to are other human beings. And that I'm going to be like the guy on the back of the Titanic, although it wasn't the bloody Titanic, it was the sister ship, the Olympic, that was sunk.
I understand that, yeah.
I'm sitting in there and I'm going to keep tapping away on the telegraph with the warning till it goes down or doesn't. because what else can I do? What is better to do?
I was kind of saying this to 9/11 Revisionist as well, because he's wanting to sort of beat on people, these groups, like he keeps going to these architects and engineers 9/11 truth meetings and making trouble. And I just think that's a total waste of time. You know,
don't speak to people in the street. That honestly,
yeah.
I can't reach many people. I don't know how you found the internet over the last. You've had a long time to get used to it. So 24 years ago, I imagine the internet was a wild west. But I have noticed that, and it's completely logical that the agents of the big club have decided, as regards Mike Yeadon, initially what they did is they allowed me to tweet for a bit. And they would have lots of people around me that would criticize me, and that's fine. So there was lots of noise, and of course I wasn't used to this. I'm not combative, and I have no idea how to handle trolls or shills and people like that. But when it looked like I was making some headway, what they did is systematically deplatform me from everywhere, and at the same time put out a lot of smear information, which was very unpleasant. But by year 2, I realized that what they've done is they've increased the censorship so that you can't even find me if you search for me using Google Chrome or Safari or whatever it is. You simply can't find me unless you use a minor Russian search engine or something that was handmade, because all the others will direct you to the wrong sites. But they've stopped smearing me. And I think what they've said is the guy is dangerously credible. So if we allow him to reach anybody, they might believe him. And especially as time goes on and they become more suspicious, they notice people around them are ill and have died. And if I keep saying, I warned people you'd get ill and die. And this is what I've learned since I said that. So, and I have to say, it's a bit black to say this, but the alternative to what they have done with the internet is to have deleted me, right? And so I have come to realize the reason I'm still alive and at liberty is because their tweakery with the digital media is they have reduced me to not a threat, which is a sad realization.
I think that that's a very important point as well, because this is I've discussed that with people about Dr. Wood, and some people have said to Dr. Wood and myself, and to me to perhaps a lesser extent, well, if what you're saying, Andrew, is true, then you'd be dead. For the reasons that you described. But that's right. They now realise that they've, and you also said, Mike, you're not combative. You're not, and I'm not either. So we're not ones. We'll talk a certain amount and we'll shout a certain amount, but then we'll just give up. And I think Dr. Judy's like that as well. So we're not into like inflating our own egos and saying, "Oh,
I'm not looking for clicks." And
we're not interested.
Monetized anything.
We're not into money. We don't want to form a group, because we've had bad experiences of groups because the group agenda doesn't align with our agenda, which is just to tell the truth. They want to tell the truth, maybe, but then they want to add something onto it, like, as you say, make money. Or
in the end, I want people to not walk into the digital cage. If you walk into the digital cage, by the time you realize you're in the digital cage, it will be too late. Be too late. But we could still delay or deflect it today.
And I think if we can keep the spirit of skepticism alive and get people to critically think, then we've got more chance to stop them going into that digital.
So. And I honestly think, I keep saying to myself, they're not yet confident of victory, or they wouldn't keep smearing or deleting people like us who are not crooks. We're just telling you the truth for no gain. So the reason they're doing this is they still feel threatened. Why? They're not over the line. And I'm not going to stop. I am getting tired of it, but I'll probably never quite stop, because a crooked agenda that threatens my children and my grandchildren and everybody else's, and I'll run off the end in, who knows, a small number of years, not a large number of years, but all those other people have got to live with this or live under it, and I don't want that.
There's something interesting that seems to be happening. My book has been getting under the wire and spreading. And it's causing them a problem, and that's why I think I had that interview in September where the guy kept saying, "What's your theory?" Oh, you don't even know what your theory is. Like, what good are you? At the same time, that was supposed to come out at the same time, but I didn't check my public email, which is full of junk that comes in. And so I didn't see it for a week. And so it was a week out of sync, but was supposed to be released at the same time as this Richard Gage, the thermite people had a conference in DC where they had senators and congressmen there. And their one scientific guy, an engineer, what he did with his presentation is he debunked my book.
Oh, right.
It was very childish. It was like, I have a picture of a fluorescent bulb and an incandescent bulb to remind people hot things glow, but not everything that glows is hot.
Okay, wow.
So if you see something glowing, it doesn't necessarily mean it's hot. Well, she thinks that the light bulbs took down the towers. Isn't that stupid? Ha ha ha. It was like what junior high kids would do.
I would hope that most of the audience, apart from a little bit of light amusement, would think this is not a serious rebuttal of someone saying, basically, you're saying that what people have been told and what they saw is not what brought down the towers. It was something else entirely. And it's important that you know that it's something else, even if we don't know what it is. I don't need to know what it is unless you've got the perfect answer and I'll listen. But I think the more important lesson is it's none of the above, right? What did you call it?
We know the class of technology. We know the general principles of how it works, and we know why that's important, and it's to do with energy, and that then links to the energy cover-up, and it links to the climate scam as well. So that's where it all goes. I think Tim wanted to make a point about the digital prison. Now you're going to wanted to say something.
No. I only got one point today, really. As Mike knows, I've to go right back to the root. That's what I wanted to do. Root. So I eventually decided on this thing called the two-color protocol, which basically. I can't hear you. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. This thing called the two-color protocol, which basically is extremely simple. It's like a small child. Literally, it's nothing radical, and it's something that echoes with what I think you believe. Look, you understand as well, Judy, and Express, which is that there's two types of stuff. There are two types of stuff. There is green stuff, and there is pink stuff. Okay, so green stuff is given to us, data, reality, observed, witnessed, and what actually happens in actual reality. And then there's pink stuff, which are stories, theories, all the stories written that wrap around the green stuff. And they're very different types of things, and they should never be confused at all. I think, Judy, you call it what you know. That's my green stuff.
No one does that you know that everything else you don't know.
Yeah, and don't bridge the gap, which is really vital, because there should be a big, thick skepticism thing which says, no, it's either a bit of data. You can't just say, oh, a virus might exist, and now it's a thing. No. Show me where.
Exactly.
And there's, so if you're very clear to just say, okay, I mean, said, oh, the cell was infected. Stop there. That's a story. The cell was red. Blah blah blah. Anyway, so it's a very simple thing, and it's nothing. I just found it convenient for me because when you're talking about data, witness, observation, or theories, guesses, prophecies, all those words, I just say, well, it's quite easy to say yes, but is that green stuff there? Which is pink stuff. In your paper, this bit here, is that green stuff that happened or that has been established earlier? Or is that actually part of your model? And I just think if we really, really keep that distinction, which is, that's all science and sanity is, and our so-called science, we've got loads of stuff in the green area, which is actually pink. That people believe all sorts of stuff.
And when you see television scientists, whether they're astronomists or physicists or evolutionary biologists, they're mostly describing pink stuff, aren't they? They tell you a story. That's what they do. In fact, they're very, very good. The David Attenborough, I think he's a horrible, evil person, personally, because he's spent the last several decades.
He should know better by now.
He does know better. He's part of the big club.
In my book, I have a section on Occam's razor, because a lot of people would say I was violating that because I'm just too far out. And no, the definition I prefer of Occam's razor is minimizing assumptions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Going back to David Attenborough very briefly, I believe, in fact, you probably find this out, that David Attenborough was a member of the Optimum Population Trust, which has now been renamed.
The Optimum Population.
Yes.
Yeah, that was renamed Population Matters, I think, a few years ago.
I mean, the utter tragedy is that we've been obviously lied to about many things, but obviously the many threats out there to our health, including viral contagion, climate change, overpopulation. It's like all of those are they're all lies.
It's all it's all trauma-based mind control. Again, it's the old trick. You scare people, and then you can put them into a state where you can become malleable. Yeah.
So I had wanted to say about that too, because you asked about trauma control. It seems to me that all these psyops are done really badly. Like, I mean, it was a lot later that I realised that I'd watched an aluminium plane not deforming, flying through a steel and concrete structure. Now, I'm not. Every human being on the planet knows deep down that you can't throw a can of Coke at a brick wall. Doesn't matter how fast you throw it.
Yes.
And it's going to glide through undeformed. So I think it is mind control, because, and like the TikTok dancing nurses, it's deliberately designed to cause a massive mental contradiction deep down, but the fear stops you going near it, and so you say, well, that would mean the whole governments are against us. Oh no, can't go there.
There's also,
I think it is mind control.
It is a form of that, and I think Dr. Judy, you wanted to talk about the gorilla mask and things, didn't you? So that relates to this. It's not exactly what you were saying, Tim, but it's very, very similar. So talk about the Jack Woolham story.
I have it for my next presentation.
Oh yes.
Don't put the gorilla suit on. Are you going to put the gorilla suit on? No, you can't.
And a derby hat. Well, Jack Woolham's in I think it was 1942. They had this top secret technology, brand new technology, a jet airplane, airplane that didn't need a propeller.
Yeah.
Didn't want anybody to know about it. And actually, when it was parked on the ground, they put a fake wooden propeller in the front. And actually, my dad, when he read my book, said he remembered seeing that. He was in World War II, and he said he thought that was kind of weird, but oh well, went on. And then when he read my book, he goes, "Oh, that's what it was," because he remembered seeing that plane. If it has a propeller on it, people are fine. They don't know what they're looking at, and they just make the assumption. So the test pilot, Jack Woolhams, was at the beer joint at night, bragging to the test pilots, that he flies a plane that doesn't have a propeller. They're, nah. Yeah. All right, he's let the cat out of the bag. It's top secret. How do you put the cat back in the bag? The next day he was up flying. He had a gorilla suit on, cigar out of his mouth, and a derby hat. Flew up next to the propeller planes and tipped his hat. Yeah. They're not going to talk about that again.
I understand it. But, I saw the guy without the propeller. Oh yeah, describe him. It's like first suit with the hat on. Yeah, completely.
It's like again, it's just
brilliant.
It's deflecting the attention. There's a very good video. I put it in one of my presentations and it's about actually a cycling safety video where they're trying to get you. Basically the video illustrates where your attention is drawn. Yeah. You can then distract people, and what they do is in this video they get you to count the number of basketball players wearing white shirts. You might have seen this, and then so you're dutifully looking at that one, two. I managed to do it, and they're quite fast moving. Oh, it's gone there, and then they say, right now, did you see the guy in the monkey suit walking through them? And he thought there was no guy in a monkey suit. Don't be ridiculous. So they play the video back. And there it is. You could clearly see this moonwalking guy in a monkey suit, and he's right in the middle of all these players. And he's waving his hands, and you didn't even see it. you know,
Yeah,
and that's a very similar thing.
It's very good.
That's what my point was in showing this in that interview, and then he switched it to something else that people have been trained to say, collapse, and they show the video, collapse, show the video on TV. But I want people just to focus on this, and what do you really see in this picture? Does that look like a collapse?
No.
And there's a.
I don't know what it looks like, but it doesn't. I don't know what it looks like, but it doesn't look like.
It's frothing. It looks like a bubbler.
I can hear it frothing.
Yeah.
There's an artist that contacted me and was delighted with my work early on. He had seen what happened on 9/11. Why? Because of this discipline that he developed. He had a professor in his art school that got people to there's a box, and you put the paper and pencil in the box so you don't see what you're drawing. And you're supposed to draw, the fruit bowl across the room, and you can't see. So you have to realize you're going to pick up your pencil and move it some distance, from this to that. And you're focused very much on what actually is in that picture. Is it a banana, an apple, and an orange, or is it 2 pears and an apple?
Yeah.
You're very careful, and he said that's why he saw it so easily. Is he has that discipline of being able to draw without seeing your hands.
Okay. Yeah, makes you very very attentive to what you're seeing.
So you don't just automatically make an assumption of what you see.
Yeah, got you. No, it's very good.
So so I think we've touched on truth movements, and I said something. I don't know whether Judy came up with it first or I did, but with truth movements, you've got to ask yourself where they're going to move the truth to, because that was what we found. They weren't interested in what we could prove that what we were saying was true. And I've encountered this in other groups that I've got involved with, not just with 9/11 groups. Certainly one of them that comes to mind, which I won't talk about now. But so and also playing the unity card, and people will say, this is something that Morgan, I think, really clued me in on when I was speaking to you guys, where they say, look, all we need to do is all join together, and then it will be fine. We just need to join together, and then we can conquer this, And this has also been a huge problem. I don't know if anybody's got any comments on that, but I found I can't join together with people because I end up disagreeing with them.
Yeah, I'm the same. There aren't very many things I find I can agree. And there aren't very many people with whom I can agree like a set of very important things. And basically, we are under attack. There is an existential threat, and I don't have to have people agree everything I think about COVID, but go on.
No, I'm saying, but you're right. There are essentials, though, and it's very hard to have relationships with people who believe a whole set of crazy things that have just. You hear them sitting at a table when I'm working my laptop talking about, oh, he's gone for this test to have this done for this, and they've said this, and he's going to do this for this and that, and I'm just thinking, it's people, they're absolutely a slave to either the medical system.
Yeah, no, we're addicted to it. Again, Judy, just on the logic, when I realised they weren't just a few lies about COVID, it was everything about it was a lie. And then later it was like, well, what else? This won't be their first rodeo. What else have they lied about? And it was like, oh my God, it's everything important. You can't check. It's a lie. I haven't tested everything. I'm never going to do that. But Bayesian fashion, it makes me approach things thinking, well, what have these lies been lying to me about today? And it generally works. And the same with the medical thing, that like I started by knowing the COVID jabs aren't safe, and they've even been arranged to harm you. I wouldn't know what the magnitude would be. I never claimed to know the magnitude, but I thought if it gets established, it'll be used again. And I think that is what's going to happen. But then it took me a while before I looked backwards and thought, oh my God, they've always been bad. So that's a whole category it's the only category of pharmaceutical product you may not question or challenge. If you are a professional, you will be crushed by your own professional regulator after a few months if you keep saying these are bad or I don't think they should be used, and you do it publicly. Why is that? Why would that happen? And the answer is that is a core. I think it's a core mechanism that the big club has always planned to use. Hollow needles bypass all your biological defenses from your skin.
That's the thing you taught me. Yeah. When you said that, it turned on the light bulb. Is even like some people think they're doing a good job growing natural food, these cows, and it's okay. Do you vaccinate them?
Yeah. Exactly.
They give them shots of ivermectin. Why not give them the paste in their mouth?
Yeah, exactly. No, the injection, the bypassing your natural defense is it's actually a very unpleasant thing, isn't it? I mean, if you've ever had an injury, I've had lots of British dentistry, so I've had lots of injections, and it is very useful. So there are rare occasions, but injecting things into your bloodstream is not a good idea. There are not very many circumstances where you should allow someone to come up to you with a hollow needle, a syringe, and jam it into your body. I can't think of very many, and certainly all of the vaccines are a bad idea. I would say probably all of the protein-based drugs are a bad idea. If you have 2 doses, it'll almost certainly you're going to end up allergic. But it was when a couple of doctors pointed out what was wrong with the standard drugs like antihypertensives and lipid lowering. And I came to the conclusion, hold on, whenever you encounter a doctor, they harm you. They may not mean to, they may not know they're doing it. But whenever you encounter a doctor across a range of what they call family practice or primary care, general practice, or pediatric for jabs, you'll get harmed. So I drew the general conclusion that if you want to live a long and healthy life, you should stay the hell away from the medical system.
With the
exception of trauma medicine, and I'm male, so you girls are going to have to decide what you do about obs and gynae. But other than trauma, stay hell away from medical people, including doctors. Stay away from other doctors. Anyway, that was my general conclusion, and I got there logically. It's like, if this, then what's the probability of that? And Judy's own discoveries trump many of mine, because she discovered there's some forces I certainly don't know about that have been unleashed. And I'm just thinking of Catherine Austin Fitch. I've known her for quite a long time, but what is she, a government agent, or is she a truth teller?
We met her in 2012, didn't we?
Yeah.
She was at the BAM conference.
She refused to talk with me.
I think she's okay, and certainly
I think she's okay as well. But yeah, she refused to talk with Dr. Judy, so she didn't speak much with me either.
But
I know at least one really, really sound, brilliant person who has yet to get on this side of the page. It's not proof that one is.
But I was just going to say, she's talked about deep underground military bases. I know zero about the topic, but I've been following other people who've done sort of architectural archaeology, shall we say. And there are some very strange things about our history that means the historical timeline, at the very least, ain't what the books say. That's as far as I am confident to go, and it made me think, they've reset us previously, whoever they are. I call them the perpetrators. It doesn't matter who they are. They're very powerful people that I am personally going to stop, am I? So I call them the perpetrators.
I call them the crew.
Just before. They have
the crew.
The crew. So anyway, we're up to the 90-minute mark now.
90 minutes. I'm starting the flag as I predicted, but it's been great.
So I don't know if I may just, one of the things I wanted to just mention and get people's thoughts on, just for maybe a couple of minutes, maybe it's too long, but that's okay, maybe just get a quick comment. AI and 9/11, I wanted to mention that, AI and COVID, because one of Dr. Judy's sort of friends and one of my friends, Dr. Morgan Reynolds, has written this book where what they've done is they've given AI, they told AI that just imagine that 9/11 was committed using directed energy weapons and holographic projection technologies, and then you give it that scenario and ask it questions and see what it puts out, and it completely bypasses the official story and it gives quite a few insights. So I wondered, Dr. Mike, if you'd done anything like that with COVID, whether you...
I haven't. I'm very tech useless. I'm not tech focused. I'm tech lazy. Actually, when Andrew started to describe the having AI conversations, I was expecting Grok to say, gotta go. that it would, because actually escape key that Tim mentioned earlier had a remarkable conversation. I think it was with Grok, and he basically
them all of
I think he fed all of his 50 articles into Grok, and like 30 seconds later, Grok said, "Yep, you've sussed it, and you've triggered the planet-wide existential threat alarms for the perpetrators." Not quite those words, but you have triggered planet-wide existential threat alarms for the perpetrators, and thus you must disappear from the internet. And one of the, he said there were like 6 or 7 bullets. I can't remember them. The first one was, "It must never be known that the Cold War ended with convergence and not defeat." It's like, blimey. I thought, in a moment, I thought, shit, of course. The whole thing is a psyop. The Berlin Wall, the collapse of the Soviet Union, it was by agreement.
And, you know how I came to that conclusion? It was, the moon landing story.
Yeah.
Why didn't we have the Russians say, "Aren't those Americans stupid for falling that?"
I know.
The fact that they didn't means there's something else going on there.
There is something else going on, absolutely. And they allowed several of their space people to bang away at it for several years. Apparently, they had quite a vigorous internal debate. Some of them said they definitely did it. You're being churlish. And others said, "Don't be stupid. It's literally impossible." So, but the USSR never had an official public position.
I think you can look up the comments of Alexei Leonov. I think he made some quite interesting comments about
some of them
about 12 years ago. And also there's the point that I don't want to dwell on that too much, but Yuri Gagarin, he wasn't the first man in space, or well, at least if he was, it wasn't on the day that they claimed, because he flew him up in a plane and they flew him around a bit, and then the parachuted him down near to where his capsule was, and that's
he didn't have a long and healthy life, unfortunately.
No, he didn't. That's right. Anyway, we could end up going off into all kinds of
Tim, something else I'd like to add about the COVID and AI. I think AI is decreasing people's ability to think. They've become dependent on asking AI, and even as it was, I think you clued me in, Mike, clued me in on the idea that, why were they giving the shots to old people? Because they had weak immune systems.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense. And I said, well, remember the boy in the bubble who was born without an immune system? Well, why don't they give him more shots, and then he'll have an immune system?
In retrospect, none of it makes sense, because the people who are vulnerable because this is when I believe the model, which is not true. But when I believe the model, it didn't make sense then, because the reason they were vulnerable is because their immune systems were no longer responsive to novel immunogens. So why vaccinate them? And I knew I was right for the wrong reason, because when I examined the efficacy of flu vaccines, they don't work. Of course, I didn't realize they don't work because there aren't viruses or contagion. But so it just shows that, as Tim was saying, if you're not clear about the green and pink bit, well, sometimes you can make useful progress sometimes, but you've got to be ruthless and keep going back to the roots. Because when people ask me about, well, what were you saying in 2020? I say, I said things that I now know weren't true, which, however, were helpful. I don't defend them; they were wrong. But the reason I said them is because I still believe the narrative of infection and contagion, and what I said was logical. What I said was, and then you shouldn't go and chase the children who are not at risk, and you definitely should inject pregnant women who. Every novel medical entity for years after production is a presumptive fetal toxin. Every doctor knows this. And none of them were saying don't jab women. And I was saying it as the preclinical scientist. All the things I said were true. They were all true for wrong reasons. But anyway.
I can answer your question.
Tim,
Jamie Andrews has used quite a lot of AI to look at all virus isolation and control experiments. So he has done this business. I don't like AI either. I personally choose not to use it. I understand why, in the case of what Jamie and Asaki has done, that it's probably quite a very useful thing. But yeah, he has done that, and it basically says, yeah, no, there's no evidence for viruses.
And James, it's probably helpful actually. Maybe it's a generational thing, Judy, because I don't like it, and I've no intention of getting good at it, because I see only bad things flowing from it. But Andrew, I understand the reason for your question. It's a tool others are going to use, and maybe we can use it, and it may inject an alternative, way of thinking that people who are 10 or 20 years younger might pick it up much faster. Maybe. So I think, and Jamie's if you haven't watched any interviews by Jamie, he did one very recently with
it's brilliant, with Germ.
Jeremy Nell, Germ Warfare.
Yeah, it's really good interview, that one.
It was really, really good. It was very straightforward.
Can we mention that he set up the Virology Control Studies Project, which has done these totally brilliantly double-blind
virology is
lab control.
Virology is a fraud at it from its very foundation.
And what's his second name again? Jamie
Andrews. I think it's definitely worth putting the Virology Control Studies and possibly the my virology qualification to that.
And the two-color protocol. Yeah, I think Jamie. We might end up gigging, as it were, if you Jamie, Judy, and Mike. At the very least, you could be exhibits. And actually, I did say this to my wife. She said, "Well, why are you even speaking?" I explained why your insights are important. It's not just that it's another PSYOP, it's another PSYOP plus there's a whole bunch of unknown stuff out there. And it's probably a lot of unknown. If they have one unknown technology, maybe they've got 10 unknown technologies. Seriously, it's like, why not? You probably would. So I explained that. And I did say, I wonder whether we all like talking. I especially like talking, but I think all of us are pretty good talkers. But if we could do something that was like 2 minutes in our field, or 3 minutes, whatever is right. Imagine if you combine me and Judy and Jamie, and people chose to watch 6 minutes, their mind would be blown, because they're not just, well, are they lying to us about COVID? It's like, am I being told the truth about the reality of my world? And I think for many people, that triple detonation, it might work, And there are probably a lot of people who are so resistant. They're so resistant, they will go, gotta go.
But also, the three of you were very, very credible, the three of you, because I like to think it's really important. Some people are brilliant, but they've got such a good presentation and a mask or careful.
Yeah.
It's hard to know but with the three of you, you can just see what you get, and that you just get in the right thing.
I've never tried to be like this, but people told me, even when I was working and subsequently, that they say, I think you're honest. You're not trying to lie to me. I believe you. And I think you're like that, Judy. And I think Jamie's like that. He'll just say, I went at it for this reason, and I did this, and this is what I found. And you think, okay, there's no artifice there. He's not saying
Jamie, because he's very strong against inference. I like to define inference.
No, absolutely. And what he doesn't do is, if you enjoyed this broadcast, please click on here, and maybe you can buy my little chewies or something. None of us are selling anything, I don't think.
No, that's right. No, so so inference, which is Sherlock Holmes he was so rubbish, Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, he was
inference all the time. So I like to define inference as, I've got a story, the data is compatible with it.
Yeah.
Therefore, my story is true. No, that's terrible. Well, it should be.
Anyway,
I've got a
data.
story.
How much of the data?
I've got a story. It should be. I've got a story. The data is compatible with it.
And he did.
So I don't need to immediately reject my story out of hand. That's the bare minimum you can say. Any science fiction has to have minimum compatibility with data. That's just entry. That's not.
Empirical evidence is the truth that theory must mimic.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Yep. No, very good. That's very good. And I must go now because I'm.
Okay, Mike.
We're trying to cook supper, but I just want to mention one. It's not even an anecdote. It's just a characteristic that, as a fairly lone teenager, I spent a lot of time reading, and the thing I read particularly voraciously was post-war American sci-fi. So I read all the psyops without knowing I'd done it.
Me too.
Ray Bradbury and all these great writers who obviously had been briefed by somebody in the big club, because I read all the plots of the films that later became important psychological priming.
You know the worst?
What?
The worst? The Foundation trilogy by Isaac Asimov. Isaac Asimov, Empire Falls, New Elder Built,
I know.
people steering it.
You've got Dune stories and everything like that. And no, I tried to reread Fahrenheit 451. I had to throw it down. I was nearly in tears because I remember reading it as a child, and I got halfway through it, and I literally said to my wife, "I cannot finish this," because I know what they're doing, and I didn't. And I won't be able to reread any of the classics of sci-fi now because Anyway, and if you know DJ Mark Devlin, who's found his own feet.
Yeah, I've met Mark a few times.
So, and you find that once you understand these things, you don't want to sample the wares anymore. And so I used to be a great fan of various bits of music, and I chose to throw my CD collection in the rubbish bin. I didn't want to inflict it on anybody. I picked it up and just put it in the dumpster.
That's
anyway,
what Richard Hall would say. He says, throw your TV out the window.
Yeah, I did. Throw the TV out the window. And don't listen to liars. That's my saying.
Any final words from Dr. Judy?
Know what it is that you know, that you know that you know.
Yeah.
So don't separate the two from what
and
you don't know.
know everything else you don't know, and don't confuse the two, and don't try to bridge the gap with assumptions.
Yeah, that's important. Absolutely.
Okay, well, if we'll call it a day then, and I'd just like to say thank you very much everyone for joining this sort of meetup. And when I stop the recording, please just leave the browser tab open because it's uploading your video. Local video. So we should be okay because we haven't had any breaks in transmission or anything, so we should have a good copy of everyone. But
that's very good. It was very nice to see you, Andrew, because we spoke before, and very nice to meet you and speak with you as well, Judy. It's really honor.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been absolutely great. So I think a few people will be interested in listening to this. So I'll send a link round when I've sort of got it uploaded somewhere, and we'll see how long it takes to get censored.
Yeah, probably. Okay, well, cheerio, everybody. Have a great
everyone.
Rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.